Case 1. The Magdeburg Unicorn. Picture this. The year is 1663. Workers in Germany are digging through a gypsum quarry when they hit something massive. An enormous skull, a giant horn, scattered bones everywhere. They had absolutely no idea what they were looking at. 5 years later, Otto von Guericke, scientist, physicist, mayor of Magdeburg, shows up to figure it out. And his conclusion? Oh, obviously, a unicorn. The reconstruction he produced, and later made famous by the philosopher Leibniz, became known as the Magdeburg unicorn, officially described by historians as one of the worst fossil reconstructions in human history. The creature had 2 legs, and a horn shooting straight out of its face. It looked like someone built an animal using spare parts from 3 different puzzles, because that is exactly what it was. Modern science showed it was a mix: rhino skull, mammoth legs, and likely a narwhal tusk. 3 Ice Age animals fused into a unicorn. It still lives in the museum in Magdeburg today. Go visit it, it deserves your respect. Case 2. The Cyclops. The Cyclops, the one-eyed giant from Greek mythology, the monster Odysseus barely escaped from, might be the most terrifying creature in ancient storytelling, and it has a surprisingly simple origin. During the Pleistocene Ice Age, sea levels were so low that elephants actually walked and swam across the Mediterranean to reach islands like Sicily, Cyprus, and Malta. Over thousands of years, isolated on these islands with limited food, those elephants evolved smaller and smaller, becoming what scientists call dwarf elephants. When those animals died, their skulls were left behind, and those skulls look absolutely nothing like what you expect. The nasal cavity, the space where the trunk was attached, is a single massive hole right in the center of the face. Ancient Greeks, who had never seen a living elephant, found these skulls and had one logical conclusion. This was the head of a giant humanoid with a single enormous eye. The Cyclops myth was born. Stanford researcher Adrian Mayer spent years connecting ancient fossil sites to mythology, and the correlation is real. The islands with the strongest Cyclops legends are exactly the islands where dwarf elephant fossils are most abundant. Case 3. Dragons and the dinosaur fossils. Every major civilization on Earth has a dragon. European dragons, Chinese dragons, Middle Eastern dragons, African serpent gods. How is it possible that cultures with zero contact with each other all invented the same creature? Because they were all finding the same evidence, dinosaur fossils, without the concept of extinction, without any framework to understand that entire species could disappear from Earth. Ancient people who discovered giant bones assumed those animals still existed somewhere. Maybe in the mountains, maybe under the sea, maybe right around the corner. In China, sauropod fossils, long-necked, enormous dinosaurs, were interpreted for centuries as the bones of celestial dragons. In medieval Europe, megalosaurus skulls were described as evidence of giant serpentine monsters. Even the discovery of pterosaur fossils likely contributed to legends of flying, fire-breathing beasts. The dragon was humanity's best guess, and honestly, not a bad one.
Wait, think about this for a second. No science, no internet, just giant bones in the ground. You think you'd call that a dinosaur? No. You think there's a dragon out there. And the crazy part? We'd probably do the exact same thing today.
Case 4. The Kraken. Of all the sea monsters in history, the Kraken is the most grounded in reality, because the Kraken is basically just real. The colossal squid, Mesonychoteuthis hamiltoni, can grow to at least 14 meters in length. Its eyes are the largest of any living creature on Earth, roughly the size of a dinner plate. It hunts in the deepest parts of the ocean. It is aggressive, fast, and powerful enough to engage in genuine combat with sperm whales. How do we know those battles happen? Because sperm whales wash up on beaches with circular scars all over their bodies, the exact size and pattern of colossal squid suckers. Scientists have found tentacle hooks embedded in whale skin. The epic sea battles that sailors describe for centuries, they happen every single day in the deep ocean. We just can't see them. The Kraken wasn't a myth, it was an eyewitness account. Case 5. The werewolf and the medical mystery. Here is where things get genuinely unsettling. The werewolf legend, people transforming into beast-like creatures, creatures, especially at night, may have two real medical explanations. The first is hypertrichosis, also called werewolf syndrome. It causes thick, dark hair to grow across the entire face and body. There are documented cases throughout history of people with this condition who were exhibited at royal courts called wild men and described in language that sounds exactly like werewolf folklore. The second explanation is porphyria, a group of disorders that make the skin violently sensitive to sunlight, causing blistering, scarring, and the slow retraction of gums from the teeth, which makes the teeth look elongated and fang-like. Porphyria sufferers historically avoided sunlight, became more active at night, and over time their appearance could become genuinely alarming. Two real, documented medical conditions, one universal myth. The coincidence is hard to ignore. Case 6. The Mapinguari. In the Amazon rainforest, indigenous tribes have passed down the legend of the Mapinguari for generations, a massive reddish-furred creature that walks upright, screams with a voice that shakes the trees, and has a second mouth on its stomach. Scientists believe this legend is a cultural memory of the Megatherium, the giant ground sloth, one of the largest land mammals that ever walked the earth. A full-grown Megatherium weighed over 4 tons, stood nearly 4 meters tall on its hind legs, and was covered in thick reddish fur. They went extinct roughly 10,000 years ago, but the first humans arrived in the Americas while these animals were still alive. They hunted them, they feared them, they remembered them. The second mouth on the stomach? Researchers now believe it was most likely a large scent gland, or a misinterpretation of the animal's unusual lighter-colored underbelly. Harvard-trained biologist David Oren spent years in the Amazon collecting eyewitness accounts and physical evidence, becoming genuinely convinced the creature might not be entirely extinct. The Amazon is big, very big. The case is not entirely closed.
Wait, if you are enjoying it, leave a like and follow.
Case 7. Giants and the cathedral bone. In the 15th century, an enormous femur was discovered in Vienna and displayed prominently in St. Stephen's Cathedral as proof, actual physical proof, that biblical giants had once walked the earth. It was a mammoth bone. This happened repeatedly across Europe and the Middle East. Every large bone was interpreted through the same framework. It belonged to a giant human from a previous age before the flood. Without paleontology, without the concept of extinct megafauna, the human skeleton was the only reference point anyone had. The bones were real. The giants were the interpretation. Case 8. The Roc and the Elephant Bird. In the stories of Sinbad the Sailor, the roc is a bird so enormous it can carry a living elephant in its talons. For centuries, this seemed like obvious fantasy. Then scientists started piecing together the history of the elephant bird of Madagascar. Arpyornis maximus, the largest bird that ever existed, stood nearly 3 meters tall and weighed over 400 kilograms. Its eggs were 10 times the volume of a modern ostrich egg. Arab explorers who reached Madagascar in the medieval period returned with stories of monstrous birds and eggs large enough to use as bowls. Those stories traveled, grew, and became the roc. The elephant bird went extinct roughly 1,000 years ago, almost certainly due to human hunting, but it was real, and seeing it in person would have been genuinely terrifying. Case 9. The Kappa and the giant salamander. The Kappa is one of the most famous creatures in Japanese folklore, a water-dwelling monster with a beak, a shell on its back, and a hollow in its head filled with water that gives it its power. It was said to drag people underwater and was blamed for drownings across rural Japan for centuries. The leading real-world candidate, the Japanese giant salamander, one of the largest amphibians on Earth, reaching nearly 1.5 meters in length, highly aggressive when disturbed, and capable of inflicting serious injuries with its powerful jaws. It lives in cold, clear rivers throughout Japan. The runner-up, the alligator snapping turtle with its beak-like jaw and heavily armored appearance. Both animals, encountered unexpectedly in a dark river by a child or a frightened traveler, would be more than enough to birth a monster legend. Case 10. The Bunyip and Australia's prehistoric terror. In Aboriginal Australian tradition, the Bunyip was a creature that inhabited swamps and billabongs, massive, aggressive, and deeply dangerous. Descriptions varied wildly. Sometimes it had fur, sometimes scales, sometimes it bellowed like a bull. The one constant was that it lived in the water and you did not want to meet it. Scientists have proposed that the Bunyip legend is a memory of the Diprotodon, the largest marsupial that ever lived. The size of a modern rhinoceros, Diprotodon roamed Australia until roughly 40,000 years ago. Fossil evidence of this animal is found most frequently in exactly the regions where Bunyip legends are strongest. The first humans to arrive in Australia almost certainly encountered living diprotodons. Over 40,000 years of oral tradition, that creature became the Bunyip.
And this is the part that really messes with me. We grow up thinking these myths are just stories, but they all came from something real. And if people got it this wrong back then, what if we are ignoring things right now that will become the myths of the future?